Hey Joe, thanks for taking my call. So I had a quick question for you. If people were to remember you by only your words, what would those words be?
Okay, I really appreciate that question. So if others could only remember me by my words, they would be this. At the beginning of the day, during the middle of the day, and at the end of the day, love is still the answer. So the reason why I would want to be remembered by those words is because I have a fundamental belief that every person, including myself, is wanting of and deserving of love. And that's love without condition. We all want to be fully seen, fully heard, fully understood, and fully accepted. When we were born into this world, we were absolutely perfect. And because of the ebbs and flows of life, conditioning from our culture, through society, through our expectations of how we're supposed to be in the world, we begin to actually unlearn who we really are. And as life takes us through, the peaks and the valleys of life, there's something that we feel we're missing. So we want to return to that, and that's where the search begins to return to love, which is the essence of who we are. So that is the reason why I absolutely know without a shadow of a doubt that love is still the answer to every question that life may bring us. It's love. It's love. It's love. It's love.
There has never been a moment quite like now. People often say and feel the world is changing, but sometimes I'm not too sure. Is the world changing? Or are we simply, for the first time, becoming more aware of ourselves and the world around us? These questions led me to create Social Fabric, a podcast aimed at having conversations with thought leaders and explore the ideas that are shaping our world. T.S. Eliot once said, "We shall not cease from exploration, and the end of all of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time." My goal is that this podcast has that effect on you. I'm your host, Ramneek, and thank you for being here. Hey guys, this is your host Ramneek. Thank you so much for tuning in. I am very excited about the Social Fabric podcast. Today, my first guest of the show was Joe Atalig. As you may have heard in the intro, Joe and I sat down to talk about a whole host of ideas around authenticity, the power of love, and the role it can play in our society, and his work in broadcasting that message. Formerly, with a background in corporate banking, Joe is the founder of Love Wave Live, a platform dedicated to inspiring and empowering people and showcasing what it could mean for you to choose love. The show notes will have all of his links, and I really encourage you to find him. He's doing incredible work. And as a quick reminder, your subscribing and sharing this show is the greatest compliment I can receive, guys. I really, truly appreciate the support. If you find Joe and our conversation compelling and have a question you want to ask me or Joe, I will leave a link in the show notes for you to have the opportunity to drop us an audio comment that could be featured in a future episode. You can either follow the link or you can email me an audio comment to socialfabricpodcast@gmail.com. All of that information is going to be down below. And now, without further delay, Joe Atalig. All right, this sounds good to me.
Cool.
And here we are. So here's the first of many, hopefully.
I'm sure of it.
Yeah. So I'm sitting across from Joe Atalig. I'm going to give him a second to talk about where he is now. And Joe, if you could give the audience a little bit of, take your time, 10, 20 minutes, whatever it takes to tell your story, like what brought you to where you are right now in this moment, and where you see yourself in the modern context right now.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, first I want to say, Monty, I appreciate your invitation to have this conversation.
Sure.
And yeah, I'm honored to be here. So thank you. So I would, it was easy for me in corporate America to say that this is what I do and this is what I am.
Yeah.
And as I've kind of searched and began to pursue what I call my soul's calling, my soul's work, right? I would say that today I see myself as a love ambassador, a bridge builder of sorts.
Yeah.
And some of the things I do is I'm a personal growth coach. So all those things tied in together. And I'm the founder of the Love Wave, and specifically Love Wave Live, which are personal growth events that are ongoing.
Right.
And so coming from corporate America over 30 plus years, stepping out of that season, that was a long season of my life, and through a lot of life events that were pretty tough, man. They were really, really tough. It brought me to a place of truly waking up, to a lot of the things that I never really addressed, and kind of just numbed. And so, when tragic things happen in our life, or at least in my life, they're wake-up calls. And so I heeded the call.
Yeah.
And so it took me to this place where I am today, where Love Wave, basically, it exists to teach, to impart, and to demonstrate the undeniable possibilities when we look at life through the lens of love.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that's kind of how, it's interesting, that's kind of how I came across your stuff. Through a common connection that we have. I met you for the first time formally, like I met you at your first event, which was fantastic. And I mean, just looking back at it, I understand, I know what it takes to just start from zero and have some type of general vision of what you're trying to do. Yeah. And then just to see it manifest into this thing where there's so many people involved and appreciative of that. So, it was just, first and foremost, I was humbled just to be part of that experience. Yeah. But I think it's a fantastic platform where I think you're going to start the conversations people want to have. Yeah.
I'm excited, man.
Yeah.
It's great to have you there.
I think, so one obvious question I have, and I'm sure a lot of people would have, is what brought your focus to love as a concept? Like what gravitated you towards that as the focal point for your work?
Yeah, great question.
Yeah.
So, after, like I mentioned, some life-threatening illnesses and things that happen, I came to that point where I hear a lot today, of course, is like, who am I? What's my purpose? Yeah. What does this all mean, et cetera? So I was in that search, and I've done personal growth work for years. Right. And I was really good at talking the talk versus necessarily walking the walk. Right. And so I was brought to a fork in the road, man. And it was either, is what's happening in my life going to constrain me, or is it going to propel me? And I get to choose. Right. So I took the latter and said, yeah, I'm going to propel. And so I was on this search, and I did some personal growth work back in the day. I mean, like 10, 11 years ago. Right. And the undergirded teaching was that it's important to have a contract with yourself. So I opted to write a new contract for me in present day. And it was that I am an honest, accepting, and courageous man, committed to express my true self now. And so it sounds beautiful, right? And it's like, and then I started to say, what is my true self? Right. And so that just began to, on an expedition of sorts, to really understand what that even means, right? We hear about authenticity, being yourself, honoring yourself, and all that great stuff. but what was my true self? And the epiphany came actually in a conversation with my youngest daughter.
Interesting.
So so I picked her up. She in high school, and went and grabbed a sandwich. And I don't even recall the specific conversation, but I remember my response. We were in the car, got a sandwich on the way back home, and my youngest, her name's Bella.
How many years back was this?
This was last year.
Last year, okay.
Yeah, this was just last year.
So people get an idea of how fresh this is.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So it was 2018, and she said something, and I said, well, I don't know about you, Bella, but all I know is that I would just want to be my true self. And she said, Dad, what's your true self? And you have kids, so
man. They cut through the bullshit like nothing else. Like absolutely. They know. They're just a brute honesty when we're younger, and the way it articulates in kids is just like, it reminds you like, yeah, that's what I'm trying to figure out. Yeah, yeah,
exactly.
So, go on. So she asked you drop that question on you while driving, right?
Right. So I'm coming to a stop sign to come out of the mall. Right. And I looked at her, and I had to think for a moment. How do I articulate this? So I just said, well, Bella, when Dad was born, right, I was kind of given all of these identifiers, right? So I'm a Pacific Islander. Right. I'm, I was told you're Catholic. Right. Okay. And all these, this is kind of it, right? Yeah. And I lived my life almost defending it all. Yeah. And then and I started to question it as I was older. It's like, I didn't even get to choose any of these things, right? Right. And so if I strip all those things away, what do I find? And what I've discovered is that I have been made in the image and likeness of God. And what I know is that God is love. Therefore, I am love. And then it was that moment, man, that
it just hit
I
you.
said, my true self is love. And tears were falling, and she goes, Dad, she said, people are honking. I'm like, oh, yeah, I got to leave. And then we're driving. She goes, that's really cool, And I thought about it. And I'm like, when I don't look out of that lens myself, just for myself, because that is the essence of who I am, I could be setting myself up to suffer. So my intention was to be the biggest expression of that. And how is it expressed is in the work that I do, and how I serve the world, in my relationships with clients, and and this is, and then I know there's as I started down that road, a lot of people were questioning or thinking about love, like the relational love, the romantic love,
just like the love you think in just a modern context,
right? Yeah, and I thought, no, the love I'm talking about is the love with power, right? The one that is not necessarily sentimental and anemic, right? But the one that has grit and teeth and sees through, right? Just surface level situations, circumstances beyond all that, and will stand no matter what to see through all that. That's the type of love, and
wow, okay.
And it's the love that really is needed today. Yeah, I mean, we could talk all day about, right?
Yeah, I mean, just by you saying that, what comes to my mind is you're almost talking. You could take the word love out and you could put in truth in so many ways, because like the way you're describing this concept of love, like the grit, it's not always just the lovey-dovey. It's the hard stuff. It's everything. So it's like trying to understand the full range of what you're doing. Yeah. Right. And what you're feeling or experiencing. Right. So that's a fascinating, and what struck me, and it's cool because, and this is why I wanted you on here, because I feel like I'm really a believer of this analogy, and I think it's very prominent in my culture, like my family background being from India, Hinduism and everything else. Yeah. But there's this analogy within that sphere of thought that all rivers lead to the same ocean, right? So I feel like in many ways we're all seeking this thing that we're feeling kind of, and then not kind of, and then going back into it, and you're approaching it from your angle, and I feel like I've experienced that in my own way as well. right?
Yeah.
And the thing that stuck out to me that I feel like is a very common denominator for both of us is what you keep saying, you choose to look through the lens of love.
Absolutely, man.
And to me, that's a huge identifier of where our power lies. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
The choice of
Totally
doing X or Y.
Yeah.
You know? And that's fascinating to me that, you know, you always have to bring yourself, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, do you find yourself bringing yourself back to looking in this perspective in situations?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, and it's not about perfection in my mind.
Right.
But it's just opening myself up to like have a heart to be perfected.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And I'm learning more and more that when something is not loved, it's a call for love. Right. And so I don't necessarily have to agree with someone's lifestyle to love them.
Right.
Right. And I think that's really foreign today. So if
Yeah.
you don't agree with anything that I say, then there's no chance.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Yeah.
And we see that, of course, you know, expanded in so many different facets. But I told my girls, my daughters, I said, you know, love is not a feeling. It's a choice.
Yeah.
You know.
Wow.
And so it's the type of, just like you, I love that analogy in terms of all rivers lead to the same
Ocean.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Because you can call it truth, you can call it love, you can call it God, you can call it universe, you can call it whatever it may be.
It's taking
right?
you to the same.
There's truth in all of it.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
And the essence of what all those represent, right, is people being seen, heard, understood, approved of, you know, accepted.
Right.
And I think that's what we all want.
So
Right.
one question I have for you, and I'd like to get your take on this, is you're seeing this movement towards mindfulness, more what I would refer to as like inner engineering, you know, like this working within your own mind.
Yeah.
We always feel like this is the first time this is happening, but do you really, like, I mean, from your experience, does it feel like we're on a tipping point in terms of where we are as a society, humanity in general? Like, do you feel like we've been here before, or we could have probably been here before? You know, we've, like, how is it that this is the moment where it seems like more people are starting to turn their focus to this type of work?
Yeah, I don't think that this is the first time this has happened. This is just a repeat or potentially an ongoing,
Right.
you know, not even a phenomenon, man. It's just this is kind of the plight of humanity.
Yeah.
And I think what's happening is that when we turn on the TV or you look at the news or go online, right, we are inundated with all of the effects
Yeah.
of, you know, of, I call it unconsciousness, not being really woken up to the fact of what is really true.
Right.
And so people are operating out of the same thing that I was, which I was telling Bella, right? Whether there be, you know, culture, programs, you know, situations in my life that help me to see through a different lens. So all those things are coming to light. And I think there's a collective consciousness that is actually being raised. So we're not going to hear that in the news. We're not going to hear that, you know, unless you're in a community of sorts. But I think that there's a definitely shift coming. And in order to do that, unfortunately, there's going to be some reckoning with what's happening right now, and in probably a tragic way, because really that's what wakes people up many times is tragedy.
Right.
So we're seeing it, you know, all the shootings and all the things that are happening out there.
Right.
There could be pockets of it, but there's conversations that are coming to the surface.
Right.
So I'm not sure if that answers your question.
No.
Yeah.
No. So, you know, coming from a corporate background like yourself, right? Talk to me a little bit about the dynamics of this shift that you had. And now, you know, a lot of people superficially will look at this as like, oh, okay, he's just going into his, you know, different mantras and the emotions of things and this and that. And this may not, this is not how the world works in large. Like, you have to be more practical. You have to be more, this isn't the real world, right? Like a lot of people say, like, what has been your experience with your circle as you've kind of shifted your work, from a corporate job, this, that, to this type of work? Like, have you seen pushback? Have you seen people get uncomfortable? Like, what have you seen?
Yeah, I have. I do know that as I have, once again, honored my contract, expressing my true self.
Right.
Right. Yeah, I think, people are experiencing me in a different way. And at the same time, this is how I was in corporate America. I mean, I believe one of my, not claim to fame, but what I was known for was actually going against the grain many times. How I led, how I built teams was pretty unorthodox. And so I just find that, now as I'm stepping into my own thing, that I'm being more open and bold and authentic in terms of my thoughts. So it is met with a little resistance, which I welcome, because I think it's a phenomenal opportunity for conversation. I'm not going to try to talk somebody into what I believe or how I'm feeling.
Right.
But that's the healthy part of relationship.
Right.
Is, allowing you a platform to share your heart, what's happening, For those who are saying it's not realistic, quote unquote.
Yeah. Because I'm sure you hear that a lot in this type of, when you start talking in these semi-abstract terms.
Yeah.
People don't connect the abstract with the practical, even though it's right there.
Yeah.
Right. So, so like, what do people say, and how have you come to react to that? Like, how do you respond to that personally?
Yeah. So I've had a couple of friends actually who, they appreciate the journey I've taken, and have interesting conversations around like religion and faith, and all those things that
usually
come into
very
play.
taboo most of the time, right? Yeah.
And I just enter the conversation, with the notion that this is meant to be. It's not about your side, my side. There's a notion of really understanding each other. It's been uncomfortable many times. Okay. But I'm learning more and more. It's in that uncomfortability is where quote unquote breakthrough happens. Yeah. In the relationship, and detaching from what I think is supposed to happen. Yeah. Like I'm supposed to enlighten a person or something.
Right. Your own expectations.
Right. Right. And so to me, it's like, it's our belief systems. That's what dictates what our quote unquote reality is. Correct. So if we're believing this is what life should look like, of course you're going to say, this dude is like from La La Land. Right. Total woo-woo. Yeah. And like, dude, come down from the clouds. Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, when it's all said and done, the things that I know, and I'll speak specifically to maybe two friends I know. Sure. We've had these conversations about, well, how, what would you say your identity is, right? And it's really based on their accomplishments. It's based upon the car that they drive. Right. It's based upon, titles and everything. And nothing's wrong with those things. Right, right. But in our conversation, it was more of, this is what success is. And I said, that's awesome. Right. And congratulations. Right. And then behind the scenes, it's like, I hate my life. Yeah, yeah. So let's talk about reality then. Yeah. When you strip all that away, what do you have? So a lot of people don't like to have those type of conversations. Right, right. So because it's easier to fit in, with what the reality is supposed to look like. Right. So I just get curious, man.
And a lot of these ideas, people can put on the back burner.
Yes.
Because life is such, at least for us, in the society we live in here in the United States, where things are great in general. Right. Where they don't have to address it. Yeah. Yes. Like it just doesn't have to be addressed. So I don't want to deal with that baggage right now. Yes. Like, and then just distracting yourself with X, Y, and Z. And, and I feel like people kind of hold off on the elephant in the room. Right. Whatever that means to them in their life.
And that was my life when I was in Orange County, right? Yeah. It's like, okay, I made it to the OC. I'm from San Diego, by the way.
Oh, okay. Okay, yeah.
So I lived in Orange County about almost 3 years before I moved here. But it was, I found myself like, so when I moved up there, I had an Explorer. Okay. Yeah. And all my colleagues, drove up in their Infiniti and their Beamer and their stuff, and I was like, oh shit, I have to upgrade.
Yeah, you gotta.
And I'm like, I'm over here trying to keep up with the Joneses.
Yep. Yeah.
And I don't even know the Joneses.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure I even like the Joneses.
Right.
Who are the Joneses? And it's like, I'm trying to live my life through peering in the windows of somebody else.
Yeah.
And so the wake-up call for me was around, what am I basing this all on? So the notion of reality is, I get really curious about it, and coming up with conversation with people. Yeah.
What's your relationship with judgment?
In what respect?
In terms of, does the idea of being judged or judging something else, like, do you deter from that? Like, do you step away from that?
Yeah, I notice it. To be real, it's fun to judge.
Yeah.
It takes the focus off of me.
Yeah.
Right?
Right, yeah.
And it's like, I don't know, I feel good judging, but I also know that when I do that, it's such a mirror.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, oh, yeah. It's more telling of you, right?
Totally.
Yeah.
I'm totally talking about myself.
Yeah.
But when I have decided why someone is doing something,
yeah,
or I've decided, oh, this person is doing, they're this, and I have no idea their story, their circumstance, what got them there, right?
Right.
That's a wake-up call for me, and it is through the spiritual practices, the disciplines of just connecting with myself that have brought me those places where I notice the judgment of others. I'm like, oh man.
Yeah.
And my daughters pick up on it too.
Right.
And then in terms of those that judge me, that used to drive my life, man. It was my ego. It's like, what do people think of me? What are they going to say?
Yeah.
And even leaving corporate to step out, I was displaced from my job. And when I came, during that time, I had several folks reaching out and say, this job is perfect for you.
Right.
And, so financially it made sense.
Right.
But I was just operating at a different space. And it was like, I want to feel it in my body. And I wasn't excited. It didn't excite me.
It didn't get you there.
It's like, I want to feel challenged. I want to feel expanded.
Right.
And grow. I'm tired of living status quo.
Right.
You're
talking about your meditative practice there. You kind of alluded to that. So has that taken a larger role in your life now?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Expand on that a little bit. Like, what is that? Yeah. What has your practice done for you, and what exactly are you doing these days that's helping you kind of align your mindset?
Yeah. So meditation is really, I used to schedule it in my life.
Okay.
Now I schedule my life around it.
Oh, okay. Wow. Yeah.
So it's just a different shift in that respect.
Okay.
So if you wouldn't mind, I want to share this analogy that helped me.
Yeah, sure.
And
because there's so many variations on people's perspective of it. So I'm very curious on how it's, what kind of role it plays in your life and what you do around it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So if we can define contextually like the universe, right, as like a home,
right,
that is wired for electricity,
right,
and you and I, Monty, are lamps,
right,
right. And what we know is that the power of the lamp, right, isn't just from the light bulb; it's through its source, which is the electricity,
right.
Right, and so when it's plugged in to that, then it's able to illuminate light, right, to use. And so the lamps come in all different shapes, sizes, colors, etc.
Right.
And it is not just the on switch; it has to be plugged in order to do that. And that's what meditation is for me, right? It is an opportunity to actually listen to silence, which is. Starting off, it was like, I can't do this.
Yeah, right.
It's like, but it starts to, I learned meditation through Dr. Shefali Sabari, who is, she's a renowned child psychologist.
I've heard of that. And, didn't she come out with
The Awakened Family, Conscious Parenting.
Conscious Parenting, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
Amazing work. I took a year-long course with her, and we would meditate every week on our calls. And it was basically focusing on breath.
Okay.
And in a conversation, she said, your breath is the only thing that you have with you when you're born and before you depart.
Right.
Your breath is the only thing that stays with you. and it also indicates present moment. So, you know, it actually helped to train my consciousness, is my perspective at least.
Yeah.
It's like as I'm meditating and just focusing on the breath, what happens is that thoughts come in.
Yep.
And so, and really teaching myself that, and then I get curious, where'd that thought come from,
Yeah,
right? It's
yeah.
like, that's a random thought, right?
Yep.
I didn't produce that, you know? So I started to get the epiphany of like, oh my gosh, I'm not my thoughts. I totally get that now.
Yeah.
And so I saw it kind of as like I'm at a train station, right?
Yep.
Here comes a thought.
Exactly.
And there it is, and there it goes, right? And so in the midst of life, how do I take that? It's when I might get triggered or somebody says something and just doesn't hit me well, right?
Yeah.
The awareness comes in
Yep.
saying, the thought I'm having right now,
Yeah.
right, isn't necessarily me,
Yeah.
right? And so it just gives me, it's kind of like a gentle touch for me saying, okay, that's meant to leave or it's meant to keep you stuck. You decide what you want to do with it.
You know, I think what you're saying totally makes sense, because I think this is where you start seeing yourself, what yourself means, right? So like for me, my experience with mindfulness has always been, you know, when we say ourselves, like me, this is me,
Right.
like what does that mean, right?
Yeah.
So like we have our arms, you know, you don't say this is me, my arms are me, like they help me get around,
Right.
but me is like somewhere up here in the face,
Right.
And then it's not really our face, it's behind our face, and then it's not our brain necessarily, because we know our brain's there, we just don't feel it, and it's helping us do things, but we feel like it's something else, right? Something else amongst all that, right?
Right.
So that is you,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So my experience with it has been very a mirror of what you're talking about, where, you know, emotions, you know, anger, frustration, you know, someone shoves you and you're like, what the hell, you know, you're in the subway or something. When you actually observe these emotions come up, they really have a very short half-life. If you pay attention to them, you know, they don't last very long.
Right.
What lasts long is if you consciously, you know, you attach to that.
Right.
And just keep replaying that
Absolutely.
over and over. Because if you just let it happen, you can't stay angry that long.
Right.
It just kind of passes. And that's been my experience, that like these emotions, these thoughts that are just constantly happening.
Right.
It's like your analogy of the train. Like to me, it's always been the analogy of the river. You know, it's been your thoughts are just the river going by, and you choose when to dive into it.
Right.
And when you can get out,
Yeah.
right? And that getting in and getting out is you.
Right.
That's the self.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely. So yeah, cool. Very cool. And
You
so
know.
also it's like the instance that you just spoke about where somebody, you know, brushes up against you.
Yeah.
It could trigger like, you know, if you either react to it, right?
React, yeah.
That's where, you know, it's coming from a place of, you know, ego or something that it's a subconscious reaction.
Yeah. You're not
Right.
responding to
No,
it. You're
right.
reacting to it.
And so, you know, to me, mindfulness allows you to like react, but okay, wait, what happened? Rather than attach a meaning to like this person was rude to me and watch where you're going. All that happened is this person bumped into you.
Yep. Yeah, that's it.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
And so am I going to feed that
Right.
power, or am I going to like, you know, give it a ribeye steak and say, here, chomp on it. And
exactly.
flip it, right. Or am I going to say,
just sit and watch it?
Excuse me. Right.
Yeah, and just let it
Yeah.
let it do its thing and leave. Right.
So I was talking to a good friend of mine in California the other day, and I said, yeah, you know, we hear the term being woke, right?
Right.
It's not like this. It's just,
To be honest, it's everything has good intentions, and it kind of gets into this like thing that annoys me sometimes. But you know,
well, and just borrowing that term being woke, it sucks to be woke many times.
Yeah,
because it's there is, and then at the same time, it's very liberating.
Right.
So it's that, you know, because you're you know, right, when you're aware, because the whole self-awareness thing, man, is just, to me, that is the portal to like absolute liberty in your life.
Yeah.
And so you start, it's kind of, you took the red pill.
Yeah.
Is it the red or the blue pill?
Yeah. One.
Yeah, that one. Where you're like, the veil is like,
Yeah.
take it, and you're like, oh my gosh, and you really start to just deconstruct
Yeah.
your own reactions, emotions, feelings, thoughts, and all those types of things.
This,
right?
like what you're talking about right here, has your experiences thus far made you kind of look back at your past and reinterpret things that have happened to you?
Man.
I know that's a heavy one, but that's the fascinating thing for me, because memory is like an interesting thing where, we store memories with a certain context.
Yeah.
And until we consciously and we're aware of it and we go back and try to reinterpret it.
Yeah.
We still react in that past way, right? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, you just saying that, man, just hit me. I'm if I get emotional,
No,
I will, but because I already was flooded with the memories of those things that happen. And yes, I have reframed it. Not even just a reframe. I really looked at it for what it is and how it's brought me to where I am today. So I can look at it as regret, or I can actually celebrate it. It's going to sound strange, but I made a decision to thank those situations and those people.
Right.
I mean, you think about that. It's like crazy. You're going to thank somebody for hurting you?
Yeah.
And it's like, they didn't hurt me. They really didn't hurt me. Right. They were acting out of their own programs, their own stuff, And so this was really, we've heard the adage, right? Life happens for you, not to you.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it sounds beautiful, but I get it now.
Yeah.
Where those things now were just steps that were ordered in my life to bring me to this point of like, I can truly step into what I'm standing for, and it's absolute love without condition. Because I haven't found anybody who loves unconditionally. Yeah. We say we love our kids unconditionally, man, and it's like, but they do something out of our own of what they should be doing. Yeah. Let's see how far that love goes.
But
right?
see, and that's the thing. You're unconditional.
Right.
That idea, is there's this culture around raising kids, and I kind of want your take on this. And me being a father too, the more I think about it, the more it's weird for me to say, and I don't hear people ever say this, is that your kids don't belong to you.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And for some reason, that's a strange thing to hear in our society, because a kid isn't like something you're growing.
Yeah. Right.
It's a life.
Possession.
It's a life. It's its own thing, right?
Absolutely.
So to be a parent has to mean something more along the lines of cultivating things that will help the person be okay on its own. Mm-hmm. Right? More than you being around.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And I feel like for a lot of people, and a lot of the stuff we're sold on a commercialized basis about parenting is on the premise of you are the person that needs to tell your kids X, Y, and Z, and you're the one who has to do this, that, and the other thing. And they have to be a reflection of you.
Right.
They're your legacy.
Right. And
as evolutionarily appealing that sounds, like, oh, my kid's my legacy, I'm living through my kids, it's not.
Yeah.
It isn't. That's just you not dealing with your own ideas around mortality. I feel like, you just can't handle the fact that you have a finite amount of time on this planet.
Right. And
because of that, you're attaching all these things to something else.
I
don't know. I don't know if you're there. Are you with me there?
1,000%.
Yeah.
It's.
Has your parenting changed through this course?
Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's revolutionized. I mean, I always had a good relationship with my I have 2 daughters.
Okay. Yeah.
But it has taken it to a whole new level. Mm-hmm. And some of it has been uncomfortable for me because, I looked at parenting as control, really.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we want to control these, little humans.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And the perception that we have all the answers. We really don't.
Right.
And, so I thought, well, where did I learn parenting from? And,
Yeah, I mean, let's talk about that. That let's go down that rabbit hole, for a second, because it comes from culture. It comes from where you came from.
Right.
It comes from your origins, right?
Yeah.
A lot of it is true. A lot of it is helpful. And a lot of it conflicts with what your own experiences are. And that happens to everyone.
Yeah.
So,
absolutely.
So, it depends on when you kind of take that on.
Right.
In your own context.
Yeah.
Have you felt like you've taken that on more now, like on the later in life or earlier in life? You tried to challenge the kind of, I mean, you referred to it as programming, but like just the.
Yeah, when I actually started my.
Like, tell me a little bit about your culture. Like, what's the expectations around it? Because everyone's a little different.
Pacific Islanders are, of course, laid back, hang loose. Mm-hmm. It's we'll get there.
Yep.
Barbecue on Saturday.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's all about Ohana family.
Right. Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the lax, very, very lax, and nothing is wrong with that.
Right.
But not great communicators. And so typically, the way of communicating is through being quiet. Don't say something because you're being disrespectful.
Okay.
So you don't have a voice necessarily,
right? Yeah.
And then also it's just passed down from generation to generation. This is what you do.
Right.
And so, all that programming comes
in.
And so I just reconciled that my parents did the best that they could.
Yeah.
I mean, they really just did the best. And actually I still have great relationships with my parents.
Right.
For me, Monty, it was me realizing that my kids were basically set out to live my unfulfilled dreams. And that came to light with my oldest, Celine. And, she, when she was 11, maybe 11, I said, okay, you're going to start getting a volleyball because I love volleyball.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Never a strong athlete, but I get out there and that's an Islander sport, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you're gonna be good.
Yeah.
And so put her in like a non-competitive league just to learn.
Yeah.
And she's getting pretty good.
That's awesome.
And I was excited, at every game cheering her on. And I actually became a coach of a young team. That's how much I loved it.
Right.
And then I said, okay, it's time to get into a club. So she. We went, and I guess she was 12, when she started in club, and she was scared to get in club. No, and I'm like pumping her up. You go, and so she made a team, and she started to like it, and she started to progress in terms of the level of her team. Mm-hmm. So a couple of years, now she made her JV team in high school, and now she made a travel team, which is in club. That's that's a pretty good achievement.
Yeah.
So it was during practice. I'm at the gym, and she comes to the court, and she says, Dad, I don't think I want to do volleyball anymore. I'm like, what are you talking about? She goes, yeah. She goes, I just don't know if I want to do this.
Right.
And I'm thinking, and then. So my reaction was like, are you kidding me right now? Do you know how much I pay? And the list just came out of everything that I have done for this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then because I've been teaching them, you have a voice, right? When you speak with respect, but I'm going to listen to you.
Yeah.
So sure enough, guess what they do? They listen. And here's what she said. She goes, Dad, am I doing this for you? Or am I doing this for me?
Right.
Right there on the court. And I was like, and I was pissed.
Yeah.
Get in the car.
Yeah. Don't be right in
exactly.
in public again. Yeah.
And I sat in that anger.
Yeah.
And then I thought, man, she's just being a mirror, right?
Yeah.
So I thanked her.
Right.
I said, yeah. I couldn't even see myself on a men's travel team.
But you know what?
Right.
Like that, the fact that she was perceptive of this dynamic.
My girls
just tells you the
amazing.
emotional intelligence that
Yeah.
because of everything you're doing,
Right.
that at least you instilled that in her to be able to detect this and say it back to you.
And so here's what's transpired since then. Now,
Right.
She's 18.
Right.
My youngest is 15.
Right.
We went to San Diego about a month ago.
Yeah.
And I forgot where we were by the beach. We were having lunch, and we were just like reminiscing, kind of, And Celine said, "Yeah, Dad, we really didn't know you growing up." And it just crushed
Wow.
my heart. I was like, what are you talking? I thought they were kidding. They go,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? They go, you bought us stuff, but, you know, we really didn't know you. You were so busy doing your numbers at 5 o'clock in the morning. And I just started, like, seeing it play through,
like a
right?
yeah.
I remember going to my office at home, right? What were my numbers? Did I meet goal? Did I, you know?
Wow.
You know,
Yeah.
and, you know,
That's
we went
powerful.
to Disneyland. We traveled. We did all that type of thing. And I thought I had the best relationship with them. But for them, to be honest to the parent like that, you know what I mean? It's like, it was like, wow. And so anyhow,
But honestly,
it's like,
that's a gift.
that's what I want.
That's
yeah,
a gift.
absolutely.
Like,
and what I learned, man, is that those kids, right? I was raised by them, and they respect that. They showed me those unhealed places, you know, that I wanted them to like live out for me, right? And so that's been cool and challenging at the same time because they have strong beliefs,
yeah.
which I appreciate. But
Yeah.
it's really cool. That's the type of relationship, man. I believe that when you start working on yourself, because really the whole conscious parenting type, you know, outlook is that you need to reparent yourself, you know?
Yeah.
And through that, your kids will begin to see what authenticity is, what taking yourself on is, owning your own stuff, etc., versus telling them. You know, yeah, we guide, we give them direction,
Right.
what have you, but ultimately, our goal is to open the pathways to say, discover it all,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And so,
I mean, I just wrote a quick thing yesterday about this, and it's funny you mentioned it. We're at this point. Like, the more I think about it, like, to be honest, Joe, part of this whole self-care movement makes me roll my eyes a little bit because,
that's funny.
to be honest, I feel like it's a trap in some ways. And I'm kind of working on this idea a little more because I've never been able to really focus myself in this or put myself on the spectrum of self-care as we kind of refer to it now. Because to me, it feels like, it just sounds like it sounds like something you were doing didn't work the way you wanted. And now you're claiming that that wasn't really me. So now I want to do what I want to do. And I feel like when you go down that road, it really kind of is telling of your idea of authenticity. And to me, authenticity means expressing what you truly feel at that moment.
Yeah.
Not you. It has nothing to
Right.
do with you. And
Yeah.
that's what I titled it. Authenticity has nothing to do with you.
I like that.
It has to do with expressing what you think and feel at that moment.
At that moment.
And I feel like
Right.
what people do is they play a role,
Yes.
right? Like you're playing a role that this is what I should be saying. Like you're saying, talk the talk, walk the walk, right? And I feel like, man, I'm just tired of, I don't want to end up going back and realizing I had 5 opportunities in life to really do something, and all of those times I played a role and failed.
Yeah.
Like, where did that get me? Like, I'd rather it been a genuine expression of where I feel like I'm at than get pushed back and fail.
Right.
Then at least I know that whatever foundation I'm building, I need to work on that.
Right.
But if I played a role, that's not my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do I do after that?
Yeah.
Because I didn't even test what I feel in the real world, right? And I feel like that's just I think this is all part of this inner engineering that we're doing.
Yeah. I like that term. I wrote it down here.
Yeah.
Inner engineering.
You know, I kind of picked up that term from he's kind of a mystic, like a guru type. His name's Sadhguru.
Yeah.
He's he came out with a book coining this kind of term, but it makes sense. Like, it's a easy way to kind of refer to working on yourself.
Yeah.
You know. But I think that's where we're going.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. No, there's just no doubt about it in my mind. I think people today many times can't articulate what they need.
Yeah.
Once again, they're trying to find those answers outside of themselves.
Yeah.
And the cool thing is that when you do wake up, you know, to really understand the truth about who we are, like you were talking about, you know, there's the form and the formless.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
You can actually play with it, right?
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong. It's like, don't you drive a Tesla?
Yeah.
Okay, that is my next car.
It is?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You're going to help me get it, okay?
Yeah, I'll help you get it.
I want you to come with me.
And you know what's interesting is this is just my weird way of kind of testing my own values.
Mm-hmm.
I bought that car well before it was in my means to buy it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And the reason I did is because following Elon Musk,
mm-hmm.
at least on what I have been able to gather from any media source, the way he expresses his ideas,
mm-hmm.
the commitment, the buy-in he has on what he's trying to do, knowing that he's probably going to fail.
Mm-hmm.
That character.
Yeah.
I don't care what he's doing. I wanted to put my money where my mouth is.
Wow.
It had less to do with global warming and climate change. It had more to do with that earnest effort that I'm seeing someone put into something.
Right.
And to me, like, you don't see that.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not cameras everywhere. You know, I'm sure there is that. Like, people are like that everywhere. Yeah. Probably like 15 in this building, you know? But I just wanted to put my resources, energy, and thoughts into things and ideas and people like that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I find myself in that same place as well, man. And so that's really, really cool.
Yeah. So where do you see Love Wave Live going? Where do you want it to go next? With everything we're talking about, we have to almost be we're the conductors in a way. Yeah. Like, we're trying to navigate this thing that people don't even realize we're on a boat, right? Yeah. So like,
absolutely.
So we have to pave a way in so many different respects. So what is your goal with your platform? Like, where do you think there's a gap? Where do you think there's a blind spot? Where do you want it? What do you need people to see next?
Yeah. So what's emerging right now? And the fun part, man, about where I am today, I don't necessarily have to have all the answers.
Yeah.
I just operate out of what the heart is in the moment, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
And what's happening today is building a platform where there is true conversation like we're having right now.
Yeah.
Right? And it just like moves me to put like on a stage, right, someone who is, I mean, even like a liberal and a far right, you know, I mean, and let's have a conversation. And then it's not controlled, but there are definitely some boundaries and guidelines with that. What the notion is that your whole intent before you speak one thing is to seek to understand, right? Not to agree.
Yep.
And be that bridge builder. You know, here's the bridge. Let's meet on the bridge. When you walk away, you can go back to whatever but we don't have those conversations because we're too busy, once again, focusing on the effect, what's happening. So we see it right now with the shootings in El Paso and Dayton.
Right.
You know, it's gun control, and then the why behind it. It's like, the guy was in social media, video games, and all those types of things. It's like deeper.
Yeah.
And so we keep regurgitating the same conversation over and over and over. So the cause of it all is through millions and millions and millions of cause and effect through that guy's parents, their parents.
Yeah.
And every situation that came in, he just didn't decide one day, I'm going to do this, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when we can the answer is ourselves.
Yeah.
Right? When we can kind of wake up to that truth. And it's too airy-fairy for people.
Yeah.
And so I believe that the Love Wave can be a platform to have those types of conversations. And I was sharing with you before that I was thinking about a Love Wave Generations type event where there's voices from teens, people in their 20s, et cetera.
Yeah.
And finding the commonality in terms of it, and then the perceived differences, right? And see where there is common ground, because that is a snapshot of what healthy relationship could be. Wow, so my daughters and I, for instance, we had a conversation the other night. What was it about? There was a lot of differences. It was about abortion, actually.
Okay.
So like my teenagers are talking about it, and they're having these stands, and they were talking about femininity, and I'm like, I don't remember talking about those things.
Right, at that age.
I'm like, this generation just blows me away.
Yeah.
And then, so my two daughters had different opinions about, this one issue. And then my oldest said, "Well, that's cool that you think that way. I can see that." And then my youngest was like, "Yeah, I see that. I don't agree, but that's good to hear." And I was like,
Wow.
"What is happening right now?"
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, and so I made sure I had to solidify what was happening. Do you guys see what's happening right now?
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what it's all about.
Yeah.
Healthy conversation.
Right.
Not I hate you now because you don't think like me.
Right.
So that's where I caught the epiphany. It's like I don't have to agree with your lifestyle to love you.
Right. Yeah.
You know?
No, and so is that a kind of a sneak peek to what we can
Yes, and
expect
so
in?
so the love wave would be, and then some experiential activities, right? So let's get people face to face,
Right.
and really start challenging like belief systems, right? And
Do you want to
challenging them in a way where it's like let's dig a little bit to find out where that all came from.
Oh man,
right?
I mean, you know what that reminds me of? I was involved in a project just last week, and by the time this airs, it'll be fine to talk about. But like with the Jubilee Project,
yes,
and and they have this series, Middle Ground, which I'm familiar with. I was so lucky to be a part of.
Oh, were you in the Middle Ground? Oh my gosh.
Yes, okay. Yeah. So it'll be out before this is out, so it'll be fine. But that's the whole concept, right? You're bringing two opposing sides together,
right? And
you put it in a format where you realize there's nuances to even what you think is the opposing side,
right?
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what I experienced. That's what I expected to experience. I mean, all my work has led me to that type of dynamic where I know it's not black and white.
Right. Absolutely.
Nothing is. So, so knowing that, it would be fascinating because people have this context that if I believe this, then there's no way the other side has anything to do with this.
And that's where love comes in.
Yeah.
And from my view.
Yeah.
Right. It's like, ooh, I mean, I hear you.
Yeah.
I see you in it. Not just I see you physically. I see you, for how you where you stand in terms of in that situation.
Right.
I actually see you. I understand you.
Yeah.
Right. And I may still have a different lens that I'm looking at and perspective around that topic.
Right.
But yeah, I appreciate it now even more. Those conversations aren't happening. So I do appreciate that work because it's really cool to see.
And it's tough because where do you start? You know what I mean? That's always the hardest question.
Yeah.
And I feel like a platform is a great way to start.
Yeah.
So it gets it going in some way. And the more people you get involved in it, the more vested that idea becomes in our social fabric, which is what this is all about.
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be really exciting to see what comes out next. Where is your next event going to be?
In San Diego, where I'm originally from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Taking it home.
Taking it home. Right. So I have some interested parties who want to align and support, the event, and I have some speakers lined up. Have a conversation next week with a potential one, and they all have either a personal growth outlook or ones that actually tell their own love story.
Okay.
They're just really compelling stories and how that translated into the work that they're doing to serve the world today.
Right.
And so, in my podcast, that's what interests me the most, is that my own life being driven by a question.
Yeah.
And, which is, what would it mean for me if I looked at life through the lens of love?
Yeah. And what is the podcast called?
The Lens of Love.
Lens of Love.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lens of Love. And so I'm looking to bring people on who are, change makers and, thought leaders and, they're like culture shifters.
Yeah.
Who, like yourself, right, have these conversations and look at possibilities versus probabilities.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And that's what charges me.
Yeah.
And in terms of those who don't understand, it's cool. It's all right.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah. And, I feel like I think this also helps us redefine what success looks like.
Yeah.
Because what we're talking about, none of it's going to happen in our lifetime.
Nope.
It just won't.
Absolutely.
We're gonna both, Joe, die as failures. But do it anyway.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And I
Yeah.
feel like human potential is not a destination. It's just a trajectory. You know what I mean? Like, and we just have to propel it to the next.
Yes.
Right?
Absolutely, man.
Pass it on to the next thing, right? And I think in so many ways we're both doing that.
Yeah.
In our own.
That's the beauty, man,
You know?
of connection, and
Yeah.
that our flavor might be different,
Yeah.
and how it's expressed or how it's utilized,
Right.
But there's alignment,
Right. But
in
honestly,
terms, right?
I
It's
could
the
say
river going into the
yeah,
same ocean.
exactly. Honestly, if you say
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
and I agree with it, and I've said it before too, some people in my audience won't be receptive to it. And the same thing, I say something,
Right.
your audience won't be receptive to it. But if we reverse that and you say it,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden some people on my side will listen.
Right.
Because as much as we feel like the message should hold its own merit,
Right.
people listen to the messenger. It's just reality.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that is where like the influence of your sphere of influence,
Yeah.
it all comes into play, because I could say something over and over and over again, but until you say it and you agreed with it anyway, it just doesn't, you know, it isn't received by that one person that's going to do that one thing.
Yeah.
That's going to propel this whole, you know, effort to the next level.
Yeah.
You know, so you don't know that what effect that is going to have.
Right.
So unless we at least put our own version of that out there, you just don't. The potential is like I said, it's a trajectory. It's not a.
Yeah.
There's no definition.
That's
like
great.
you know
I like
place.
that. Yeah.
So that's the exciting part. You don't know. You'll just get a call out of the blue, and then all of a sudden everything changes.
Right.
You know.
Love that.
And I really appreciate everything you're doing. You know, especially, you know, I encourage everyone that is listening to this to dig deeper into Joe's story. The reason I didn't, you know, Joe, and I apologize. I didn't mean to be rude about it, but the reason I didn't dive too much into your past, in terms of what brought you to Love Wave Live, and I didn't really go there, is because you've said it so many times.
Yeah.
I've been following your work, your features on other podcasts, your features on other things, so much that my intent for our conversation was to people to get an idea of where you're coming from, but let's talk about what are we struggling with.
Yeah.
Like let's talk about shit that we don't understand.
Yeah.
Right now.
I love it.
Because I feel like that conversation is going to create the content and the ideas people need to move it forward.
Yes.
Not where we've come from. We figured that out.
Absolutely.
That's boring. It's old news.
Absolutely.
You know, like now, what is your challenge? That's why I keep asking, what is your challenge with Love Wave Live as a platform? Where do you see it going? Where do you think it may not go? And I feel like the more we kind of dig into our work now, it gives people a call to action to add on to it.
Right.
You know, they're not just listening to a story and saying, oh, that was an interesting thing to think about.
Yeah.
It's like, this is happening
right
now, next month. You know what I mean? So that's why I wanted to have a conversation about this is where we are now.
Yeah.
This is where we feel like it's going.
Right.
And this is what we're doing to get there. So if anyone wants to join in, you know, give one of us a call, right?
Absolutely. No, I appreciate it and value that. And, you know, we had a discussion actually, you know, about that, and I was feeling that as well in terms of like this story needs to like either shift or you know, yes, it's things that happen to me, but it doesn't define me. Yeah. Right? Yeah. And so there will be a time where it needs to be told, and it's an important story. Right. But yeah, I was feeling that myself, so it was definitely an affirmation of what I was feeling.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So and moving into that.
And I feel like passion is like, it's not a constant thing. It's a moving target. Mm-hmm. You know, like I'm sure in your own work, you've become really focused on one thing. Right. And you just go at it for a while. Yeah. And then all of a sudden your just attention kind of shifts. Right. And like in you want to shift. Yeah. You know, and you just got to let that happen. Right. Because you don't know what you can contribute until you just keep doing it. Yeah. You know? So. I think we're both onto something.
Yeah. I think you're right.
You know,
it's just the synchronicities are just crazy.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to remember how when you reached out to me about Love Wave.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and then you came and you handed me your book,
yeah,
which I loved, and then, you know, we kept in touch.
Yeah.
You know, you never know, right?
I mean, that was the thing. Like, I was like, he's doing something. Not everyone in this room sees it yet.
Yeah.
They're halfway. Some people are halfway bought in, halfway not.
You're right.
But they're here.
Yeah.
And that's step one.
Right.
And just seeing you do that,
yeah.
It was, you know, it was great to just be present during that and to witness that, because I mean, you were getting ready. You were like all over the place, right? But I was in the crowd, right? I was listening to what people were doing, feeling, saying, right? And there was an energy. And I think that energy comes when you kind of, with intent, bring people together.
Yeah.
Where most of your work was being done for you and you weren't even there.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean?
That is crazy. Well, I have a fundamental belief that when you have, or there's a formula, right? Intention, which is your deepest rooted commitment, plus a mechanism equals a result.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so
definitely.
And many times in those intentions, like, you know, I want to put on an event, or I want to start a business, or what have you. There's always 100% of the time a competing commitment that comes, and it could be, you know, I'm more committed to being comfortable. I'm more committed to being safe.
Yeah.
And that's an intention as well. And whichever weighs the heaviest is what went out.
Yeah.
So I like to be challenged. And so I set an intention for the event to embody it, and everything came. It was like rough. And I was pretty solo because in my corporate job, you know, I had a team of project managers, and I had, you know,
unpack that a little bit in terms of putting the. So just to get an idea, and you guys need to, if you want to get an idea of the extent of what happened, Love Wave Live, the platform that Joe's developing and talking about, he brought together a host of speakers. Was it like 6?
There were a lot. There were 12, actually.
12?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so it was 6 and 6. I think it was half and half. And he brought them all together here in Phoenix to just talk about specific topics around love. And how many? What was your turnout?
150.
150. Yeah. So I mean, it was a comfortable turnout. Like everyone had space, but it was a full packed room.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. It was fantastic to see to come together.
Yeah.
And talk to me a little bit about. I want to go there because it's one thing to be in corporate, like you were alluding to, where you've got this behemoth of a machine behind you, right?
Right.
But when you're let's say an entrepreneur, right? When you're creating something, and it starts with you. Yeah. And at least from my experience, because I've been self-employed or an entrepreneur since, let's say, 2009. No one gives a shit.
No.
If you don't want to wake up, good for you.
Yeah.
You know, if you don't want to make that call, great.
Yeah.
You know, like no one's going to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
There's no syllabus. There's no agenda.
All right.
Half the things you think of might be important, may not.
Exactly.
Probably won't.
Yeah.
It's a dark type of endeavor.
Yeah.
Going from that type of dynamic. Oh, and by the way, you need to, you know, buy food and have shelter and all those things. Having that kind of dynamic, which a lot of entrepreneurs would relate to.
Yeah.
Like true entrepreneurs, not like, oh, this didn't work out, I'm going back to a job. Like just 100% committed.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about unpacking the how you developed it. Where did you ever feel like it's not going to work, scrap it? You know, like
I did
all those things that kind of unpack it a little bit.
Sure.
You know, leading to the event.
Yeah. Up to the event, I have learned and continue to advocate that I call it the universal slap. The universe slaps you in the face and say, you know, how many people need to tell you something, right?
Yep.
And so that was happening, you know, in terms of being a voice.
Right.
Right. And it was actually through meditation where it came through around, you know, Love Wave. And I was a part of this 6-month mastermind group. And we would meet every morning for an hour, hour and a half, you know, with 50 people across the country. It was amazing. And there was one exercise where it was called Kai Lego, and the two guys who kind of formed it, this combination of their names. And the essence of it is seeing our future self, what we see ourselves being and doing, right? Being that today. And speaking backwards, like, oh, I remember when I started this event and da-da-da-da-da. So what happened is that we typically do it with a partner, but on this one morning, the facilitator, you know, the guy who was heading it up, Kyle Cease, he said, I want to talk about, you know, let's do it collectively. He goes, so anybody could start and let's just let it flow, right? So no one, you know, volunteered. He goes, Joe, I want to hear from you. I'm like, damn. And so I just, you know, took myself off mute and I said, well, you know, what we hear today is there's a blue wave coming, there's a red wave coming. This was November of last year, right?
Okay, yeah. So 2018.
Yeah. And election time, right? There's a blue wave coming. You know, I said, but this group, we're going to start a love wave. And that's where the term came from.
Okay.
Right? And then I just
so
started.
it just coined right there.
It was just coined right there. And then I just started to riff and then it came through. Now, that's not when I declared it. So I continued just to, you know, listen, because in meditation and what have you. And I remember it was December the 18th is when it came through. It was like, I'm going to have this event and build a platform for transformational teachers, speakers, healers, right, to share their own story in their own lane, to know that it's in a diverse way that love, you know, reaches us and touches us and moves us. And I wanted to build that platform. And I'm like, the love wave, you know? So the next morning I get on the call and I declare it. And I said, I'm going to have an event. And I had no clue, man, how, where. I just right that said I'm going to have an event. It's going to be in the May-June timeframe of next year because I'm thinking I need at least 6 months to pull this together, right? And I just know it's about understanding the power and the possibilities of love. And so that I made really, really clear. So instantaneously, Kyle, who has oh my gosh, this dude's huge. He says, I'm going to be there. I want to speak at your event if you want me. And I'm like, what? And so that formula I told you, intention plus mechanism equals results. Yeah. The mechanisms show up. And the first one was right there. I'm like, oh my gosh. So he says, I'll support you in whatever way you need. I believe in you. And in this so much, Joe, the love wave, that I'll pay my own dime coming. You don't have to pay me. He goes, and my speaker fee, you don't want to know what it is. I'm like, what? And so it was crazy. So it was, remember, it's December the 19th. Yeah. In hindsight, like a week later, I realized, oh shit. It was exactly a year ago that I was let go from my job on December the 19th, 2017.
Wow.
Where they displaced me.
Yeah.
And so I just love those synchronicities, right? Yeah. Those little thumbprints from the universe.
Right. Yeah.
And
so from December 18th, 2018.
So really I kind of just, for the holidays, I didn't do anything. So January 2nd, it was like, I got to get busy on this. Okay. Within a week, I went and visited 5 places. I just took action, man. And I said, okay, this, you know, was at near the airport. I'm like, this is good. Price is good. I'm going to put a deposit down. And so they asked how many people. I'm like, oh, hell. You know, and so these decisions in the moment where I did not pre-plan, where typically I would have a strategic plan ready to go, is a new experience for someone going from corporate to, you know, entrepreneur. And so I said, 250? I don't know. And so it was like, okay, you know, and then she goes, and we could, you know, work with that based upon how ticket sales are. So then I just began, so I got that secured. And then within a week's time, I had all the other speakers lined up. They just started to show up in a sense, and people that I knew. And then I'm like, you would be awesome for that. So I'd ask, you know? Right. And it all just started to come together. Then someone said, hey, do you need help with the website? And, you know, so these resources started to come up. Right. But in the midst of it, I was really reluctant to promote it.
Why is that?
Yeah, so here's my entrepreneurship brings up all your shit to the surface, right? These mindsets, these hidden beliefs,
your ego.
Oh my God, ego, and like all these things that entrepreneurship is absolute personal growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. In conjunction with wanting to grow, your passion, your business.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Et cetera. So all that was happening simultaneously. And in the midst of it, I didn't have a team.
Right.
I was like doing it all. So doing like a gazillion things on social media, and then
Yeah.
And then finally I said, I need to ask for help.
Yeah.
So I actually got on that call I was telling you about, and said, if anyone wanted to help out. So people started. One lady donated $3,000 worth of T-shirts. She goes, to help this movement, whatever sales you get out of it, do it to forward it to the next one. And
oh wow.
Yeah, and then people said, hey, so most of them, the volunteers, were not from Phoenix.
Wow.
There was like 2. The rest of them were from different parts of the country. So in hindsight, if I was more mindful around the promotional part of it, probably have a bigger crowd, but it was what it's supposed to be.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I would say the keys were making an intention and declaring it. That was the important thing. Was taking that window,
articulating it
to
people,
it, right? Because it was that window of opportunity. If I didn't do that, I would have talked myself out of it.
Yeah.
Because right, life kicks in. It's like, that was stupid.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and then with that intention every day, and then my spiritual practice at that time, or it still is actually today, is asking, okay, love, who would you have me go talk to? Where would you have me go? What would you have me say? And also, what would you have me be open to in terms of receiving?
Mm-hmm.
And then things start to hunt me down.
Right.
In the midst of it, though, like I mentioned, it was I struggled, and I actually called Kyle and I said, was your first event like a shit show? And he just laughed. He didn't even answer my question. He said, why don't we make this the greatest shit show ever? This is going to be a flop. And so it took the edge off of like what I was even thinking. I started laughing. And after I picked myself off the floor, I was like, okay. He goes, yeah, this is going to be a failure. It's amazing. I'm so excited,
Yeah.
And then he said, yeah. He goes, yeah, this is going to be a shit show. He goes, did you sell any tickets? And he was like, being like, yeah. I mean, I have like 110 right now. And he said, cool. He goes, yeah. It's probably not at capacity, is it? So he was like, and I just said, he goes, and so what? So he goes, I'm going to give you one word. He goes, it's responsibility. Take the responsibility of having to determine who's going to be there, how they're going to receive it, what people are going to say, embody what you are wanting to be, and that was love. Embody love. So that when I released, man, and surrendered is when things started, just come into play. Let control, which was hard because that's what they teach you in corporate America.
You're not from that. Yeah.
And so in that, it was this resting in it, right? I coordinated the music, the slides, everything.
So like,
solo, right?
you're building this thing.
Yes.
From 9 a.m. to 10 p.m. 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. you're a website designer, and then after lunch you're a
totally different hats.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So, speak to me about you're putting this together. How do you keep a creative edge through this process?
Yeah,
because again, there's the mechanical
Sure.
side of this.
Yeah.
But then there's the vision side of this.
Yeah, to me that was the fun part actually. I started to, really get in a creative space, and it was because of stillness. It really was in terms of
your practice.
My practice.
Okay.
But it started to really kick in when I did release and kind of just allow things to happen and surrender.
Right.
Because vibrationally, I was just in an excited state.
Yeah.
So I know when I was, singing my old sad story, it's hard to have any creative juices flowing at all.
Yeah.
So, and allowing that flow, right? It's kind of like hesitation, like stops the rhythm of it all, So, I love music, right? And I have some friends who don't have a beat, right? And it's like when you hesitate, it stops the rhythm of things. So, I just took I took the promptings from my heart, so it got me into a creative space of looking at what I want the experience to be, right? Without like it has to be a certain way.
Yeah.
And that got really, really fun. And then in hindsight, I'm like, man, I wish you would have done this.
Yeah. And which will always happen.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. But on to the next, right?
Yes.
So,
absolutely.
You touched on something that I've come across in my own experience as well. And you said, you know, when I think back to my story, it's very hard to be creative. Like just the past. But when I looked into what I was trying to create, and I, you know, you're in it,
Right.
it was much easier, and you get into a flow.
Right.
And from my experience, I feel like there's an idea out there that I've been kind of playing with, which is, you know, physiologically, there's in two states you do your best work. Whether you're completely stressed out and it's not sustainable,
Right.
but you can really churn out some shit if you need to, right, in a stressed environment. The other is when you're completely in a joyous state.
Yes. I would agree with
you know what I mean? And both of them will give you that grit that you need for that creativity that we're looking for.
Right.
So I've always tried to kind of caution and try to fall into the category in a state of mind of being joyful before I approach anything.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's always given me a better awareness and more presence in whatever I'm doing.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Totally.
You know,
Yeah, totally.
like, did you see yourself going through this kind of dynamic as you were putting this together?
Yeah, and it actually happened in the creative process as well. There were questions that came up for myself in terms of, I always question the motive and intent of why I'm doing it.
Right.
Am I trying to get something do I want to give something?
Right.
And so, and that shifts, you know, what's being created.
Right.
Right. And so it was a good notice for me. And, you know, it helps me to put the bat away around beating yourself up around it. And just, once again, be aware.
Was there one big thing that you would, in hindsight, change about the first event?
Oof.
Or maybe two, maybe a couple of things come to mind, whatever.
Yeah, I would scale back the speakers.
Scale back, okay.
Yeah, so there were a lot of them, even though they were, initially I wanted it to be like a TED Talk type format, right? Yeah. You know, so.
But you're iterating it, you know? You're
I gave them like 18 minutes each.
Right.
And for 12 speakers to come off like clockwork was crazy. Yeah. And
that's why I was like, was it 6? Because I didn't feel like it was 12, right?
Yeah.
And I was there, like, you know, so it didn't, the way it flowed,
right,
it didn't feel too cumbersome.
Yeah, and I had a couple. The cool thing is there were different levels of speakers. People, it was their first time. Others were seasoned. You know, and the ones that were seasoned were freaking out, saying, "Joe, you need time for this, this, and this." I'm like, "It's all right." Right? Like, it'll work. Yeah, it'll be fine. Yeah. You know, and so afterwards they were like, "I can't believe how well it flowed." You know. Yeah. And you know, so I'm sorry, I forgot your question earlier.
I mean, we were just talking about coming from a joyous state of mind.
Yeah.
Or in a stress state of mind.
Yeah.
And being able
I experienced both actually.
In that process.
Yeah, in that process.
Yeah.
And you're right. I love what you said about the stressful part isn't sustainable.
You
know. And so what I would change, you know, in terms of that is probably scaling that back, but I do believe in hindsight that all of it was meant for my understanding and my learning.
You know it. Like, you know it, you're not, you didn't read about it and you're guessing this is what works.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, and it helped me to appreciate the team aspect of it because, you know, those that did, you know, eventually show up and be a part of the team was an important part. You know, I used to have events at my former job. Yep. But like I mentioned, I had a full team, and I just show up and, you know, give me an update. You know what I mean? Exactly. You know, and then change this, right? Right. And now when you're in the trenches, you start. I said, man, I always gave them accolades and appreciated them, but there's a whole new depth of it. That came in experiencing this. So other than that, I would say it was supposed to be the way it turned out. Yeah. Moving forward, it helped me to see the possibilities of what could be created.
Did you after going through this experience, and I feel like there's been enough time now from that event. Yeah. Did you walk away with something that you truly are like, would not have thought of that? Like completely like, you know, like learned something or took away something that you didn't even expect to take away from it? Or was it kind of around your expectations in general?
No, I think the biggest thing I walked away with is that I am capable, of bringing people together, a gathering place, a common place. I mean, and I see that sown throughout my entire career, but on my quote unquote own, in a place where I could speak about the things that I'm passionate about, those things that, tug at my heart.
Yeah.
I can still bring that to the table, because I had a lot of doubts, man. I'll be honest with you. Yeah. Faith and doubt, that struggle.
Right. Well, go into that a little bit. What was the main thing holding you kind of on edge through this process?
Yeah, it was totally ego. Right?
Ego, okay.
Yeah, totally ego, and
like a fear of failure, or a
fear of failure,
turnout.
Turnout.
Okay.
What people would say. I mean, all those things that drive the ego, right? And potential, like, it just wouldn't meet people's expectations, and so that was an ongoing thought that would come. Yeah, for sure. And so then I started to overcompensate. So what I did was, and I see in hindsight, man, that wasn't a smart deal. So for my first event, I mean, it wasn't totally bougie, but I didn't need the curtains in the back and the uplights and,
right.
And I had like full on AV, and I'm glad I did,
right.
But that's where it was like, okay, I wanted a great experience. At the same time, ultimately, I want people to walk away with something actionable versus just getting a temporary, like, I felt good. Right?
Yeah, right.
And so moving forward, this is about rolling up your sleeves, taking what you just heard, applying it to your life, having something experiential, some physical thing that you do within this
like a tangible
event.
thing.
Yeah, something. And then immediately saying, how do I now move when I step out of these doors, right? Yeah. To have love impact my life.
Right.
That's the vision that I have for Love Wave. And then just like a wave, right? Yeah. That goes about, it's a tsunami, man. It's like, and who knows? That's why I love Jubilee, is that it's a phenomenal platform to illustrate these things. And so who knows, man? The sky's the limit in terms of what this could result in. So in its infancy, I think you get the heart of what I would like to create, and I am creating.
Right.
I'm excited.
And it's going to mean different things to different people.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that is totally out of your control.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So you don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah.
You this is where you're going, but people are going to take it in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
And I think that's the exciting part.
I'm going to write a book. I'm totally out of control, and I love it.
No, definitely. One idea I wanted to share with you and kind of just talk around, and I think this would help you too, because when you're starting something, when you have a fan base of one, right? When you're in your living room, you're like, all right, tomorrow's day one.
Right.
I think in society and just the business culture, we have this idea that we have to get out there in front of everyone. We need to get thousands and millions of people involved, and it's just, and after that, it's going to blow up, and it's going to become this big thing. Yeah. And from my experience, we all have our experiences where we get kicked in the nuts and it just doesn't work, and over you're trying and trying. So I've come to find that a better approach to building on something where not everyone sees it yet is what I call, and I kind of take from Seth Godin, which is he's a blogger and marketer type person, is to find your smallest viable audience and work backwards. Yeah. So what would it take to make 1,000 true fans of your idea?
Yeah, that's great.
They're already out there.
Yeah.
Right?
They are.
But then it's a little more like, okay, that's doable.
Yes.
There's got to be 1,000 people out there that have had this hunger like me.
Right.
And I bet you they're at least in this country.
Yes.
So I could probably get a hold of them.
Yeah.
To start. And then that if you go with your smallest viable audience and that's all you worry about, the rest will happen.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? And like, I feel like turnout is a fear because
Yes.
it's like, oh man, how are they going to perceive this event
Yeah.
if they see all these empty seats?
Right.
All these different thoughts are going through your head.
Totally.
But out of those 150 people, if 20 people are like, this is it, dude, you're on your way.
Yeah.
20
Yeah.
out of 1,000, you're on your way.
Yeah.
Right? And those 20 are going to tell at least one person
Right.
that will also buy in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh man. Yeah, that's so resonant right now.
Yeah.
Someone asked me about the next event. Oh, so you're gonna like double the thing? And I said, actually, no. I like to quote unquote scale back.
Yeah.
Make it more intimate.
Yeah.
You know, so people can't hide.
Yeah.
You know?
It has nothing to do with the
Right.
number.
Yeah,
and as
nothing
much
to
as,
do with the number.
I mean, as much as there's a capacity aspect of it, like, you know, you need to be able to at least have it sustain itself.
Sure.
You know, I mean, you're renting space, you're doing all this stuff.
Right.
People need to get paid for helping in some way, right?
Yeah.
But having that mentality, especially as a founder, I think is very powerful.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you'll have the perseverance
Right.
to go through the time where no one cares,
Yeah.
because no one knows.
Yeah.
Like, and that's the main goal. That's like the main punchline. No one knows.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you feel like you've been yelling at for like almost a year straight, right?
Right.
But literally, in the aggregate, no one's ever heard of this.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
So what do you expect them to do?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely right.
So I think it's exciting
Yeah.
because it just shows you how much potential there is.
Yeah.
You know.
That's big.
So.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man. And that is extremely helpful for me.
Yeah.
You know,
No, and I'm excited to be alongside with you. You know,
Yeah.
we're both going at it. You know, are there any other ideas or thoughts that came up that you?
Well, there's when I started this work, there are 3 specific causes that really, you know, like, you know, that break open my heart. I
Okay.
mean, you know, that's when I know I was like, okay, this is a part of my work. And one of them, of course, is the empowerment of children. You know, so back when I was in ministry in church,
Okay.
you know, sometime back, and my ex-wife and I were part of children's church.
Okay.
So this was an inner city church, and we just loved up on these kids, and they're just beautiful kids. And in fact, one of those kids, when he was 7 or 8, he's like 30 something now. He came to Love Wave, so it was really cool.
Just a little closer to
Yeah, he was really cool to see him and what he's evolved to do. And so those types of things are important to me. And I'm not sure how that manifests or what exactly that is. Maybe it's supporting a cause.
Okay.
But that's one. The second one is healing the inner child in adults.
Right.
Because I found in my mentoring and coaching work, 100% of the clients that have come through, it is tied to that. Right? Is their little Joe
Yeah.
wanting some attention or some love or that type of thing.
Yeah.
And typically people don't want to go down that path. They don't come to me and say, I want to work on my inner child.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, when
And
you
yeah.
think about it, we're all just grown children.
Yes, absolutely.
Like literally we
Yes.
are. You get us in a room
Yeah.
and just give us a minute to
Right.
just stop, like get out of the noise.
Yeah.
And everything we talk about is just
Right.
what grown children would talk about.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Right. Exactly. You're right. Exactly.
It's-
The third thing is abolishing homelessness.
Wow.
And
Oh,
so,
okay.
so these 3 kind of a trifecta of like I see it as the triangle, whether Love Wave is a conduit to organizations that support that work, or it evolves into some work of mine on, you know, starting something. I don't know. But those 3 continue to come to the surface time and time again.
Unpack that homelessness to me. Why?
Yeah.
What brings you to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. And one of the speakers at Love Wave asked me that same question.
Okay.
And I said, you know, I don't know. I've always befriended people who were homeless. I don't know. My family always thought I was crazy. And as she started to ask questions and understanding my own story, she goes, I get it, Joe. She goes, you know, have you ever heard the term, you know, returning home? I said, I have. She goes, you know where home is, right? And I said, I think. And she said, it's your heart, it's yourself, you know. And based upon your story, I don't think you ever thought you can come home to yourself. And I was like, oh, man, it's like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And so these people who are, you know, lost and, you know, who everybody has a different story. And as I have spoken to them, it just moves me many times. And some of the smartest, most wisest people.
Right.
And they're human. So it is about serving them, right? And so there's an organization in Hollywood called the Giving Keys. It excites me so much, and I purchased them. But they basically have keys that have a word that you select, so they're embossed on it, and you purchase it, and the proceeds go to helping homeless come off and putting them back in the workforce. And so they have celebrations when people go through their program,
right?
And you see the before and after, and man, each time I'm just like, that blows me away,
right?
So restoring people,
that's it.
Yeah, it's all embedded in, and all that is a love trifecta right there. So those are that's it. And so I'm just continuing to think about how does that equate to the work. And I'm not racking my brain about it because I know that because I have a strong intention about it.
It's a general guideline.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, yeah. No, and that's all you need.
Yeah.
You know? Man, that's powerful. You know, that's interesting. I'll recommend this podcast to you. Do you know Malcolm Gladwell?
Yes. He's
part of a podcast. He does his own revisionist history, but he's part of another podcast where he's one of the reporters for it. And an episode that he did, this is so nuanced, but it's so crazy that you noticed homelessness. He deep dives into homelessness. And this just happened like a month ago.
Really?
And it's crazy how, and I'll find the podcast it is. It's crazy how, even though in society and in politics you don't see it, but the more social scientists study all the epidemics we're dealing with, you know, like mental instability, health, XYZ,
right? Like
all the data is suggesting, and I'm kind of like half-assing these statistics, but they're kind of they should be close, that like almost like 80%, or like a lion's share of the shit we're dealing with that we don't like, all comes down to homelessness.
Wow.
And you know, whether not having a stable living environment,
right,
is the precursor and core cause of everything else. Instability in a family, domestic violence, health, you know, all those things. They're all, so like counterintuitively, you wouldn't think, well, is homeless the core cause of it? But there's a lot of data suggesting that that's fascinating. That might be it.
That is fascinating.
You know, we're trying to put Band-Aids everywhere.
Yeah.
But if we just worked on this, and it's so crazy that you mentioned that as like something that is resonating with you to work for. Yeah. Man,
if you don't mind, I wanted to share. Yeah. You know, so I live in Southeast Gilbert.
Okay.
You know, and so like I don't see any homeless folks there.
Right.
And so I'm driving to pick up some medication at Walgreens, and sure enough, there's the homeless guy.
Right.
He has a cart, and it is the most beautifully immaculate cart. And I'm like, wow, he's organized. You know?
Yeah, yeah.
So I pull up, and this is before I sold my Infinity, but I drive up in my car, and I look at my wallet. I park, and I'm like, okay, I have $30. So I get out of my car, and I love to talk to him. I don't know why. Yeah. So I walk up to him. I'm like, hey, how are you? I said, my name is Joe. And his name was Ed. And I said, so, dumb question. I'm like, so are you on the streets? He's like, he just nods his head like, yeah. And I said, do you like want to like find a shelter or anything? And he says, I don't like the shelters. I really like being on my own. And, you know, I make my own rules and everything. And so I said, so do you need anything? And he said, no, I'm good. And I was just shocked. I'm going, you don't need anything? And I looked in his cart, and, you know, like I mentioned, it was immaculate. It was so well, you know, like taken care of. And so we just started to have a conversation. So like 10, 15 minutes later, you know, he knew I was from San Diego. We started talking about the Chargers, and he even knew the mayor. And it was a fun conversation. And I felt awkward giving him money now. So I just walked away, and I said, it was a pleasure meeting you. Thank you, you know. And so I get in my car and I'm thinking, well, was I supposed to give him money or what? So I turn around and I leave and I drive up to him and I handed him $20. He grabbed it. He didn't say thank you. And the ego was like, oh my gosh, that was rude. And then, he kept on going on and I drove away. I'm going, what's that all about? And I thought, oh my gosh, here I am driving. I'm up here. This guy's down here. I'm going to save his day and give him $30 and enlighten him with my knowledge. And that totally was a setup for me to see that I'm exactly like him. It's just, and it's like, he's more free than I am. And so it was like, I was thanking God. I was like, thank you for that.
Yeah.
I'm going to take these $10 and go get an In-N-Out burger now.
Yeah. No, oh man.
So, yeah.
Like, people don't understand the power. You don't have, it's the expectation you have when you're giving. That's not giving.
Yeah.
And that pisses me off.
Absolutely.
Like,
He gave to me.
internally, like, if you're expecting some kind of reaction, response, or something, you're not giving. That's an exchange. That's a trade of something.
Absolutely.
Right? And you don't know where he is.
I don't.
And there's a human dignity and having the ability to give someone that.
Yeah.
Or restore that.
Yeah.
And not say a word about it.
Right. Yeah.
That is so powerful.
Yeah.
I feel, I'm glad you turned around and did that.
Yeah.
Because it takes a lot to have the courage to stay silent in his situation.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good.
Like, just imagine the battle he's going through in his mind, thinking, man, that $30 would, holy shit, that would get me through midnight.
Yeah.
But everything he's battling inside about where he is, why he's there, all that, man.
And I appreciate what you're saying about attached giving, right? And that exchange and believing I'm doing this for a good cause, which it still is, and it still will aid him.
Sure.
But
Sure.
just the realization of, I wanted something from that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's in conflict sometimes, especially in what we're doing.
Yeah.
As entrepreneurs.
Right.
We have to create this, and the mechanism being a business where it can sustain itself in some way. I've always getting into this field of helping people or advising people. A lot of my, not colleagues, they're not my colleagues, but my co-peers, I've always, there's so many times where I get a lot of shit and people are like, why are you just giving away all this info? Like, you can charge good money for this shit.
Yeah.
Why do you spend a couple hours and not, you could actually make some good money on the side doing this.
Right.
And the more I feel like to have an impact on anything, it has to do with your character and not what you're doing in that very moment. Yeah. And I feel like I'll have another great idea. I'll make something off that.
Yeah.
But this one I want to share, and this can help these people.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with, I get it. There's a money aspect to it. There's a business aspect to it. Like, I got to pay my own bills too and everything. Right. So I have to be sensible about it. But at the same time, I am not my ideas.
Right. That's good.
Yeah. If people endorse me, if people endorse your idea, your vision, they're endorsing your ability to navigate. Not what you're doing right now.
Right.
And when you get that endorsement, that's a true fan.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's big.
And I feel like I think that's what we're going for.
Yeah.
And what's a greater gift than that? Here's one thing I wanted to kind of get your take on. But how does love play into politics for you? Because politics is everywhere, in terms of just in the conversation. And some people try to avoid it, but there's a reflection there.
Yeah.
And have you seen a clash have you seen it help? Like how, you know?
Well, it's funny because that came up because of, what's her name? Marianne Williamson.
Okay,
During a debate, she said basically love is going to help Trump or what have you. And tons of memes came out of it. And I thought about what does love play in politics? And so I would answer that with a question.
Okay.
How does hate play into politics? Right? And hate is what, the Taliban and all the, terrorism and even looking at going back to Hitler and, all those things is around hate. And so I think love is so uncomfortable in that setting, right? And if we break down what that means, that there is a role in it because we all have that fundamental, need and want and deserving of it. And like I mentioned, this is the love that I described previously, which is around seeing through color, seeing through economic class, seeing through, culture and all those types of things.
Yeah.
More around humanity, because if you think about where love has come up in politics, you look at MLK, right? And the grassroots, like civil, movement, that was embedded in love. And look what's happening, so the heightened awareness and people being pulled towards that. I don't feel that in today's politics. So I do think there's a place in it. I'm not saying I'm the part of it, but it was when that came up, when she said that, like on a stage, I'm like, oh, she's gonna get a lot of laughs. Yeah. But it's when the ridicule comes strong, I'm already programmed to say, ooh, she's speaking truth. Right? Because the masses will say, that's ridiculous, you snowflake. Yeah. And she's like, this is truth. Right. Right. So that's how I think how that comes to play and what that looks like. I'm not sure.
Do you think that's going to be more of, because I feel like we need liaisons that understand this type of work that we're in, but also know how to translate that into like almost like what your next platform is going to do, translate into pragmatic type steps, right? Tangibles that people can take away from and see in their real life right now. Right. And I feel like we need more liaisons, like polymaths, people that understand these things and are able to articulate it and crosswalk it from a, like a stage platform to politics. Right. And I don't know, maybe through your events, you're going to start creating people that feel compelled to participate in the process in that way.
But and that's the reason why I decided on Lens of Love. I think that I went through 8 eye surgeries and lost my vision in my left eye. Right. And my ophthalmologist continually used to say, take care of your working eye. Yeah. He goes, and everything will find its way there. In other words, if you're walking, a pebble's going to find it. Yeah. So wear protective glasses. Yeah. He goes, don't wear contacts. Right. And, just being mindful, right? And careful about that. And I thought, what would happen if? So I closed my eyes and I was listening to a program and I said, if I was blind, how could I understand what was happening on this TV screen? And I could feel the emotion within a conversation that was happening. And it was a talk show. And so I was thinking, wow, that's what love is, right? In terms of just like without that external lens that we have grown to judge things by, right? Love doesn't see any of that. It's fully accepting, fully embracing, fully encouraging, and that's the lens. That's powerful. That will transform, right? Relationship, conversations, bigotry, all those types of things. So yeah, I don't know. The possibilities are there, and as you pose that question and give me a peek of what could be, I'm totally open to that. Yeah,
that'll be interesting to see. Yeah, because I think we don't know how it's gonna express itself. Yes. In that arena. Yeah. You know what I mean? Right. So, no, that's great. Thank you for that answer. Hey everyone, thank you so much for listening. If this episode made you think and you wish to reach out with a comment or a question, record your voice and send us the file at socialfabricpodcast@gmail.com or record yourself on my website. I'll provide the links in the show notes below. Be sure to follow this podcast on Facebook and Twitter, and also join the exclusive Social Fabric Facebook group and engage with other listeners from around the world. Until the next one, be well.